A 19-year-old boy with no pilot training walked into a cockpit during a crisis and saved 200 lives from certain death. This is not a movie. This is the true story of how one teenager became a hero at 30,000 feet when both pilots collapsed and death seemed inevitable. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Matt Palmer sat in seat 23B, headphones on, eyes closed, trying to ignore the crying baby 3 rows ahead. He was flying from Seattle to Denver, heading home after visiting his grandfather. Just another boring flight. Just another day. But in exactly 47 minutes, this boring flight would become a nightmare, and Matt would have to make an impossible choice. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with their carts, coffee, juice, peanuts. Everything seemed normal. Matt opened his eyes and looked out the window. Mountains below, clouds above. Beautiful, peaceful. He had no idea that the pilots in the cockpit were about to face a medical emergency that would change everything. Captain James Richardson had 23 years of flying experience. First Officer Sarah Chen had 12 years. Together, they had flown over 15,000 hours. They were professionals. They were trained. They were prepared for almost anything. But what was about to happen? No amount of training could have prepared them for. Matt pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos from his trip. His grandfather had been a pilot in the Air Force. They had spent hours talking about planes, about flying, about the freedom of being in the sky. His grandfather had even let him use a flight simulator program on his old computer. Matt had loved it. He had spent countless hours pretending to fly, learning the basics, dreaming of maybe one day getting his license. But he was just a kid playing a game. He was not a real pilot. He had never flown a real plane. He had never even sat in a real cockpit. The plane hit turbulence. Not unusual. Passengers gripped their armrests. The seatbelt sign came on. A flight attendant's voice came through the speakers, calm and reassuring. Everything is fine. Just a little rough air. Stay seated. Stay calm. But in the cockpit, something was very wrong. Captain Richardson felt it first. A tightness in his chest. A burning sensation. He tried to breathe deeply, tried to focus, but the pain was getting worse. He looked at Sarah. He tried to speak. But before he could say anything, his vision blurred. His hands went numb. He slumped forward in his seat. Sarah saw him collapse and immediately grabbed the controls. Her training kicked in. She reached for the radio. She needed help. She needed to declare an emergency. But as she opened her mouth to speak, she felt it too. The same tightness. The same burning. Her heart raced. Her hands shook. Something was terribly wrong. Something in the air. Something toxic. Carbon monoxide. A leak. She did not know. All she knew was that she was losing consciousness fast. She managed to flip the autopilot switch before everything went dark. The plane was now flying itself. But autopilot could not land the plane. Autopilot could not handle an emergency. Autopilot could only keep the plane steady for so long. In the cabin, passengers had no idea what was happening. They chatted. They read. They watched movies on their screens. Matt had fallen asleep. He was dreaming about his grandfather, about flying, about freedom. A flight attendant named Rebecca walked toward the cockpit to check on the pilots. It was routine. Just a quick check. She knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again. Still no answer. Her heart began to race. She used her key to unlock the door. What she saw made her blood run cold. Both pilots were unconscious, slumped in their seats, not moving, not responding. Rebecca's hands trembled as she reached for the intercom. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "We have an emergency. We need help. Is there a pilot on board? Is anyone on this plane a pilot?" The passengers looked at each other, confusion, fear, panic starting to spread. Matt woke up to the sound of Rebecca's voice. He heard the desperation. He heard the fear. He stood up and looked toward the front of the plane. People were whispering. Someone was crying. This was not a drill. This was real. Rebecca repeated her call. "Please, anyone with flying experience. We need you now." Matt felt his heart pounding. He thought about his grandfather. He thought about those hours on the simulator. He thought about everything he had learned. It was just a game, just a hobby. But what if? What if he could help? What if he was the only chance they had? He started walking toward the front. His legs felt weak. His mind raced. He was not a pilot. He was a kid, a teenager. What could he possibly do? But he kept walking. Other passengers stared at him. Who was this boy? What did he think he could do? He reached Rebecca. "I have some experience," he said. His voice was shaking. "I have used a simulator. I know the basics. I am not a real pilot, but I can try." Rebecca looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, but she also saw something else: determination, courage. She had no choice. She nodded. "Come with me." They entered the cockpit. Matt saw the two pilots unconscious. He saw the instruments, the lights, the switches. It looked like the simulator, but also completely different. This was real. This was a real plane with real people depending on him. 200 lives. 200 people who trusted that someone would save them. Rebecca tried to wake the pilots. She shook them. She called their names. Nothing. They were breathing but unconscious. Whatever had affected them was serious. Matt knew he had to act fast. He sat in the captain's seat. His hands touched the controls. They felt cold, foreign, terrifying. Rebecca grabbed the radio. She connected with air traffic control. "We have an emergency. Both pilots are unconscious. We have a passenger attempting to fly the plane. He has simulator experience only. We need immediate guidance." The controller's voice came through. "Stay calm. We are going to help you." "What is your name?" "Matt Palmer," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Okay, Matt, you can do this. We are going to walk you through everything, step by step. You are not alone." Matt looked at the instruments. Altitude, speed, heading. The autopilot was still on. The plane was stable for now. But he would have to turn it off eventually. He would have to take control. He would have to land this plane. The controller asked him questions. "What instruments do you see? What is your altitude? What is your speed?" Matt answered as best he could. His hands were sweating. His heart was racing. The controller's name was David. He had 20 years of experience. He had talked pilots through emergencies before, but never anything like this. Never with someone who had never flown a real plane. David knew the odds. He knew how difficult this was, but he also knew they had no choice. Matt was their only hope. "Okay, Matt, first thing, we need to get you away from the mountains. I am going to guide you to turn the plane toward Denver. The airport is about 150 miles away. We are going to get you there. You are doing great. Just listen to my voice and do exactly what I say." Matt nodded, even though David could not see him. He felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. 200 lives, 200 people trusting him. David instructed him to disengage the autopilot. Matt's hand hovered over the switch. Once he turned it off, he would be in control, completely in control. He took a deep breath and flipped the switch. The plane wobbled slightly. Matt grabbed the yoke. It felt heavy, responsive. Every tiny movement affected the plane. He could feel the power beneath him. Thousands of pounds of metal flying through the air at hundreds of miles per hour. "Turn the yoke slightly to the right," David said. Very gently, just a little. Matt did as instructed. The plane began to turn. "Good. Now level it out. Bring it back to center." Matt corrected. The plane steadied. He had just made his first turn. In a real plane, with real lives at stake. Behind him, in the cabin, passengers were being told what was happening. A teenager was flying the plane. Some people prayed. Some people cried. Some people sat in stunned silence. Parents held their children. Strangers held hands. They were all in this together, all depending on a boy they did not know. Matt's arms were already getting tired. Holding the yoke steady required constant attention, constant adjustment. The plane wanted to drift, to climb, to descend. He had to fight it. He had to stay focused. David kept talking to him, guiding him, encouraging him. "You are doing amazing, Matt. I know this is hard. I know you are scared. But you are saving lives right now. Keep going." The minutes felt like hours. Matt's mind raced through everything he had learned on the simulator. Altitude control, speed management, banking, descending, landing. Oh no, landing. That was the hardest part. That was where most accidents happened. Even experienced pilots sometimes struggled with landings. How could he possibly land a plane? David seemed to read his mind. "Do not think about the landing yet. One step at a time. Right now, just focus on getting to Denver. We will deal with the landing when we get there." Matt nodded. One step at a time. He could do this. He had to do this. They flew for 30 minutes. Matt's hands ached. His back hurt. His eyes strained from staring at the instruments. But he did not let go. He did not give up. Rebecca brought him water. She squeezed his shoulder. "You are a hero," she whispered. Matt did not feel like a hero. He felt terrified, but he kept going. The Denver airport came into view. Matt could see the runways in the distance. This was it. This was the moment everything came down to. David's voice became more serious. "Okay, Matt, this is the hard part. We are going to bring the plane down slowly, very slowly. I need you to reduce your speed first. Pull back on the throttle. The lever on your left, gently." Matt found the throttle. He pulled it back. The engine sound changed. The plane began to slow. Good. Now we need to descend. Push the yoke forward, just a little. The plane will start going down. Matt pushed. His stomach dropped as the plane began to descend. Too fast. Pull back a little. David said. Matt corrected. The descent smoothed out. He was learning, adjusting, surviving. The runway was getting closer. Matt could see emergency vehicles lining the sides. Fire trucks, ambulances. They were preparing for the worst. Matt pushed the thought away. He would not crash. He would not fail. He would land this plane. David talked him through every step. Lower the landing gear. Matt found the switch and pulled it. He heard a mechanical sound as the wheels extended. Reduce speed more. Adjust your angle. Keep the nose up slightly. Matt followed every instruction. His entire body shook with adrenaline and fear. The runway was right there. 500 feet. 400. 300. Matt could see the numbers painted on the ground. He could see the lights. This was it. Keep steady. Keep the nose up. Wait for it. Wait. David's voice was calm but urgent. Matt held his breath. 200 feet. 150 dot. The wheels touched the ground. Hard. The plane bounced. Matt's heart stopped. But then the wheels touched again. This time they stayed down. The plane was on the runway. He pulled back the throttle completely. He pressed the brakes. The plane slowed. Slower, slower. And then it stopped. For a moment there was silence. Complete silence. And then the cabin erupted. Cheering, crying, applause. People were hugging, sobbing, celebrating they were alive. All 200 of them. Alive because of a 19-year-old boy who played flight simulators in his spare time. Matt sat in the captain's seat, his hands still gripping the yoke. He could not move, could not speak. Rebecca hugged him from behind. You did it. You actually did it. Emergency crews rushed onto the plane. Paramedics took the pilots to the hospital. They would recover fully. It had been a rare case of simultaneous medical emergencies caused by a malfunctioning air filter. But they were going to be okay. Matt was escorted off the plane. News cameras were everywhere. Reporters shouted questions. But he barely heard them. He was in shock. The passengers lined up to thank him, to shake his hand, to hug him. Parents brought their children to meet the boy who saved them. An elderly woman kissed his cheek and called him an angel. In the following days, Matt's story spread around the world. He was interviewed on television. He met with aviation experts who were amazed by what he had done. The odds of someone with no real flying experience successfully landing a commercial aircraft were almost zero. But Matt had done it. Against all odds. Against all logic. He had done the impossible. His grandfather watched the news from his hospital bed. Tears streamed down his face. That is my boy, he whispered. That is my grandson. Matt visited him a week later. His grandfather hugged him tight. I always knew you had it in you. All those hours on the simulator. All those conversations. You were preparing for this moment. You were meant to save those people. Matt returned to his normal life. But nothing was normal anymore. He had seen what he was capable of. He had faced his greatest fear and conquered it. He enrolled in flight school. If he could land a plane with no training, imagine what he could do with proper education. He was going to become a real pilot. Not because of the fame, not because of the attention, but because he had found his purpose. The 200 passengers never forgot him. They formed a group. They stayed in touch. Every year, on the anniversary of the flight, they gathered to celebrate life, to celebrate survival. To celebrate the teenager who refused to give up when everything seemed hopeless, Matt's story became a reminder of something powerful. In moments of crisis, heroes are not always the people we expect. Sometimes they are 19-year-old boys who played video games and listened to their grandfather's stories. Sometimes Courage Co.